Hey all, welcome to Share Trek. This is Raj here. Friends, today we have the opportunity to speak to Jeff Galvin again. He has kindly agreed to take some time from his busy schedule, and he is quite busy right now making sure that you guys get AGT103-T. He's keeping the organization going, he's putting all his energy behind it. So, Jeff, welcome to Share Trek HIV, and thank you for giving your time to us.
Thanks, Raj. It's great to be back, and it's my pleasure.
Yeah. So, Jeff, one of the biggest thing that our channel members generally ask is what is happening with AGT 103, etc. So, I would like to start off by asking the most important question from my point of view. Jeff, how are you doing and how is American Gene Technologies doing? How are you managing?
Well, I'm doing great, feeling good, working very hard. It's a difficult period in biotech right now. It's even more challenging in HIV because of recent policy changes in the United States and across the industry, and even some announcements from the major players, which is focusing more on treatment than cure. And I think that these things are, headwinds that we have to face. But we have a strategy, and we are continuing our quest to create a functional cure, a one and done treatment that would allow people to be free from thinking about HIV. That's really, the best definition that I can think of for a functional cure is that, one treatment administration, and people can get HIV off their minds. They don't have to worry about developing AIDS. They don't have to worry about being contagious, and they don't have to worry about constantly suppressing the virus.
Yes.
It's got other benefits as well. It actually could be lower cost to society, and I think it's a better quality of life for folks if they can avoid having to take antiretrovirals, because I don't think that those are without, side effects. There is
Yeah.
some impact of that. So yeah, that's where we're at, and yeah, feeling good and making progress, albeit it's a uphill climb, and progress is slower than we'd like, obviously.
Yeah. So, Jeff, the way I look at it from my vantage point, I see two major when I say two major objectives you may have, there will be other things analogous to it. One aspect is financing the entire clinical trials to take it all the way to certification. The other is the technology itself, making sure that you have learned the lessons from the past, building it in, and then having a proper clinical trial regimen. So I would separate it as business and technical. So I would be very eager to hear from you a little bit about the business side, the challenges and how you're handling, and the technical side and the challenges and how you're handling, so that our audience can get an understanding that it's a complicated process, and the reason it takes time is because it is complicated and involved.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, well, let's start off on the business side here. So, the that is, corporate development is really the focus right now, because without funding, we can't move the clinical development along. We're going to need to raise about $35 million to do the next clinical trial. And that seems like a doable number. There are a lot of biotech focused VCs, and we recently have engaged a new chief business officer whose his name is Jim Schaefer. You can look him up online. He has had a long career at GSK and then a series of other companies where he grew all the way up to the CEO role, including essentially doing what I've had to do for another company, where he moved them from a phase one to a phase two, raised all the money, and so his experience and his contacts are fantastic. His skills and his connections dovetail really well with the rest of the team. And so I think that that has been a very important puzzle piece that we've been able to add over the last few months. And with it, we've got some great strategic input alongside of our ability to reach out to his network for funding. So I think the 35 million is a good probability, and I think it's going to take us the rest of the year to raise that. Now, that means that the clinical development is on hold, but it doesn't mean that we haven't made progress in terms of learnings or, even data from the clinical trials that we've had so far. And on this channel, I've talked to you about viral reservoir before. So I already revealed that we had, very good results in terms of viral reservoir. But since that date, we've been able to complete all that data and compare it to other studies like the Immunocore study where they saw a reduction in viral reservoir and an NIH study where they did an analytical treatment interruption and saw no reduction in viral reservoir. So we did an analytical treatment interruption, but it's clear that it wasn't the ATI that caused the reduction in viral reservoir. It was our cells. It was our cell therapy. And we brought the circulating viral reservoir measured by IPDA down to zero. This is a very exciting result. And I think that this is sort of our marquee data. And then, we are also able to show a reduction in viral loads, okay, because it's the viral load that determines how contagious somebody might be. The viral reservoir, though, is the driver of viral loads and viral rebounds. So the key aspect of our cell therapy really seems to be showing great effect. And now we need to figure out how to tune the protocol so that we can take advantage of that, bring down the viral loads to non-contagious. And we also have to think about the durability of this. Now, the durability of the effect was 865 days. That's when we cut the study off. We didn't see
Mhm.
an additional rebound or loss of control. The levels were higher than we wanted to see, but they were all under 25,000 particles per ml. That's, very low. To get 100% of your patients below that is statistically very interesting. So, this data that we've been able to consolidate, and we wrote a white paper, is being presented at the International AIDS Society conference in Rwanda. So we
Nice.
are doing a presentation there of our viral reservoir data. We were accepted by the group. And so that's an exciting update
Yeah.
for everybody that, the industry seems to be taking this quite seriously. And so we've got, progress on the business side, we've got progress on the data side, and the critical thing now is to start the next clinical trial and to get statistical power behind things that we've already shown and tune it so we can get better results in viral loads.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going on here and I want to give you a chance to ask another question, but I wanted to make one other point on the business side. I think this is another smart thing that Jim has brought to the team here, and that is to craft a path through the regulatory environment that reduces time and reduces risks so that it looks more attractive to these institutional biotech investors that would be willing to invest in HIV cure. And the way that he has come up with is that there is a small group of people that are multi-drug resistant, and the FDA has established a very low bar to be approved for multi-drug resistance. And it's still a pretty big audience. There's 35,000 people that are in that category that lose control because the strains of HIV that develop
Evolving.
under pressure, right? They mutate and they escape, all of the different treatment options. And there's very few treatment options once that happens. Sunleca or lenacapavir is the one that's making a lot of news right now. But even in that, 25% of the people don't respond to lenacapavir, and that is still a chemotherapeutic. And therefore, it is possible that the virus can mutate away from it. So it may work in people for a while and then stop working. All right. So we've got a completely unique approach and also an unmet need in this area that we can address. And the FDA only wants to see a half-log reduction in viremia to justify an approval in that area. That's what Sunleca was able to do or needed to do in order to reach its endpoints. And that's something that we're pretty confident we can do with our product because we've already reached, 1 to 1.4 log reduction
That's
in these.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very encouraging. I think our audience will be really happy to know that. One more thing I wanted to simplify for our audience
Mhm.
was the fact that the one of the best things that you found out, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the modified CD4 T cells that you inserted into the patient's bodies during the phase 1 trial, a whole lot of them survived the interruption time. I think one of the way that I remember you described to me was that if a CD4 T cell is not being used, the body will recycle it.
Mhm.
So, despite the body's recycling because they were under ART for a long period of time, quite a few of AGT103-T survived in the body of the patients. And then, once the virus was exposed to it, the AGT103-T started multiplying, brought up the level, and brought down the virus. This is the mechanism I understood, which means that the durability question most likely is going to be answered in the positive when you actually put it to test. So the way I see it, and I would describe to my audience, is that Jeff has got the recipe, he's got the layout for the dinner table and everything. All he's looking for is the business side to bring the check so that he can order all the ingredients, put the cooks to work, and serve out the feast. So that's the way I would say.
And we've learned a lot that can improve this therapy, right? The durability question is a big one, right? Now, we did see 865 days for the critical effect of, reducing the viral reservoirs in the bloodstream down to zero or below the level of detection of our IPDA test. So, that's very positive, but we see that there are three different types of cells, CD4 cells. I really thought of it to a large extent as being two different types, but there's actually a third. The first one would just be, an ordinary CD4 positive T cell. Another one would be one that's in memory. So, and that can happen with CD8 cells as well. So there's a, compartmentalization of certain parts of the immune reaction to HIV that can be stored and that last a long time. And I think we were confident that we were getting high levels of those memory T cells, high enough that we were getting this level of durability. But there's also one that's more of a stem cell. And it doesn't mean that we have to go into the bone marrow to get it, but we can actually encourage the growth while we're expanding these in the manufacturing process so that we get a higher level of these stem-like ones that, would be that have a reputation for having, lifetime durability. And I think we must be getting a small number of those in the current manufacturing process, but we actually have been talking to some scientists recently that have a process by which we can increase the percentage of these cells that end up in that stem category. And we think that that's a way to increase the durability.
Right.
Now, yeah. And then for a long time, we've posited, we think this is a good hypothesis, that if we take people off of their antiretrovirals right away, instead of waiting, sometimes in some cases more than a year, the stimulation in vivo of the CD4 positive T cells and the growth of the CD8 cells will encourage a much better clearance of the viral reservoirs, maybe tissue resident viral reservoirs, and the virus itself. And so we might see a much, more contained viral load and a lot of other benefits from changing the protocol.
That's amazing. And I'm hoping that from the business side also we have some rate cuts or something coming in which can give a tailwind and make things much better. Because when we look at the overall environment, it's a challenging environment to do a regular business which is mainstream and established, like, for example, running a diner or running a newspaper or something. But when we are talking about cutting edge genomic science to address a hard to conquer disease, this operating environment is very challenging. So, on behalf of our viewers and everybody, I'd like to wish you the very best and really appreciate how hard you have been trying. And I hope you get a lot of success in this one.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think, we're committed to keep going on this, as long as we see that it's working, which we're seeing, And, as long as we can find sufficient funding to continue on, and we have raised some money over this last year that has allowed us to get the runway that we need to reach out for the bigger checks. So that's the positive news on the business side. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, we might see, one of these biotech focused VCs decide that the risk reward is worth
Right.
it, because
Yeah,
we do have really great data and a fairly established asset that has de-risked the technology side of this quite a bit, and so we think it's a good bet.
that's nice. That's nice to know. The reason I was coming to this point was basically because a lot of our audience are really appreciative of what is being done by the industry and the scientists in general to find a solution. But it's understandable that there's a significant segment of the HIV, PL, HIV population who are getting desperate, understandably, because it's been decades and they have not been able to see any progress. So I just want to share, I have been addressing these concerns with the audience on and off during all my videos. But I
Mhm.
just wanted to get a feeling from you, like what would you say to people in general? So I'm going to share a few comments that I have received from our audience, and I would like to get your point of view. Maybe you could give them an idea of what it feels like from the other side, like the person who is making all these things happen so that a therapy might come into place. So I'm going to share with you some of these comments, and we'll see what it looks like. So here are the comments that I have. This person Roshni 3848. What about AGT? Any updates? Another guy says AGT 103 first trial successful? Question, question, question. And this is in Hindi. Kabhi aayega AGT 103 means when is AGT 103 coming? What about AGT 103-T? And any update on ICVAX and AGT's phase 2 trials? He's already on phase 2. He's thinking that phase 1 is over, we are in phase 2. So
Yep.
I have told them, you know what? Jeff is trying to organize everything. It's not as easy as making pancakes. There is a whole lot of things that goes in. So Jeff, I would just like you to share your thoughts with the audience so that they can understand what it looks like from your point of view when you're trying to get this cure across for them.
Yeah, well, it's a challenging environment for raising funding for biotech. And so, I think that that's the most difficult impediment. I believe that the technology is bearing out. And so I'm way more comfortable on our ability to cure HIV, to create a functional cure, than maybe, the being able to predict exactly when we'll be able to raise the money to start the phase 2. So that's great that, we have been talking about phase 2 for a while. So that comment about, an update on phase 2 is completely reasonable one. That's what we're looking forward to as well. We think that we nailed the phase 1, we got safety and efficacy, and we think that the next thing to do is a phase 2 that could be even converted into a pivotal trial. And we think that this idea of looking at multi-drug resistant patients and giving them, the another option besides lenacapavir, which does not cover 100%, then this is something that would allow us to get to a commercializable product more quickly. And that, of course, would garner the support of the industry. Once you prove that you can do something, once you've got a revenue stream, it's a completely different game out there.
Yes.
Then we really have opportunities for partnerships or M&A or, other types of funding sources. And we think this is practical if we can prove it to that extent that we can commercialize it ourselves. If we don't get a partner that wants to publish this thing globally, we can still get it out because the manufacturing process is simple enough and reliable enough that it may not require a tremendous amount of money to organically grow this business.
Mm.
So that's the thank you for folks that are still keeping an eye on this. That's really great. And we're doing our best, and we're making progress.
Yeah. And I think that the multi-drug resistant is something that I didn't know about before. So that gives me even more optimism that things would move in the right direction, because once you prove some results out there, then there is no reason why you should not be given an opportunity to try that on the wider audience with a conditional approval from the FDA. That's
Yeah.
quite possible, in my opinion. Of course, I'm not a scientist or anything, but that's the way I think. And I was also thinking that there is no uh, there is no reason why there shouldn't be half a dozen cures out there. So if AGT succeeds, EBT succeeds, and something else also succeeds, it may be a functional cure or it could be a sterilizing cure. Each one has a unique advantage for a certain part of the world, for a certain part of the population. It's a part of a toolkit which is going to help us to conquer HIV. So, from that perspective, also, pharma majors and other companies should be having a much more open mind on M&A. And at least in the genomic side, we saw some movement. Verve Therapeutics was taken over by Eli Lilly recently, and the share just jumped $7 overnight, and it was almost a 40% jump or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And they had some therapies in the clinical trial for heart-related conditions. So
Mhm.
that gives a lot of hope that the big pharma is now starting to replenish their pipelines, which have kind of diminished, and that's a very good environment to be in. So, yeah,
I
please.
think for HIV has unique, sort of attributes of the current industry. It's highly consolidated. There are two major players. They have a huge revenue stream around treatment, and so they're under no pressure to move to a new paradigm. And a functional cure, obviously, is that new paradigm. I think it's a bigger moneymaker for them than the current treatment revenues, but the current treatment revenues are forever. And so it is consistent with a model that they're very comfortable with. It's a very predictable and reliable revenue stream over the long term. I mean, HIV population, people living with HIV, replenishes itself at about the same rate that we're losing people that have HIV. And a lot of people are not being lost to AIDS. A lot of them are just being lost to old age now. And this is sad in a way too, because they had to live the remainder of their life, with HIV, with the stigma, and with the side effects of the medicines. And the longer they've been on medicines, the more side effects. And also, the earlier medicines weren't quite as, sort of targeted in a way where they minimized the side effects. So, there's that's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate that they're not more motivated. These big players aren't more motivated. But again, if we can show something that either creates the appearance of a threat to the existing treatment paradigm, well, then they'll reconsider it,
Yes.
right? And I think they'll lean forward on this and want to know more, and they're gonna want to either know that it can't come out, right? And it can't come out because they own it, and they're going to bring it out at the pace that sort of serves their corporate needs. That's not the way I want this to go. But there may be other companies that see this as an opportunity. They may have a small, sort of strategic position in HIV treatment that they think that could be quite large if they were the one major pharma company that was offering a functional cure. And
Yes.
it's clear that the audience wants to be cured, no matter how good the treatments get. I still keep talking to people that are living with HIV, and they're grateful for convenience and less side effects, but they really just want to be rid of thinking about this, the stigma, all of those things. So it's a forgotten population. There just doesn't seem to be a tremendous amount of attention being paid to HIV right now, especially in the positive sense. I mean, think about USAID being shut down.
Yes.
You know
That's a
that
big setback.
that's a big setback. PEPFAR, I think, is still defunded, or at least not funded to the extent that it was. So, we're going to see, really negative things going on in third world nations. And I think people forget, but that creeps its way into, developed nations as well.
Exactly.
You can't contain a virus, that 20 million people in Africa have. If it starts to mutate, you
Mhm.
know,
Right.
create strains that are no longer, treatable or whatever. This is a global issue.
Yeah, I think Bill Gates was also on various podcasts and media lamenting that. And
Mm.
then he dedicated more money, but he said, I can't compensate for US government.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. I can't do that. So that brings me to the other set of comments. Some are very hopeful, like this Wayne Barrow, right? What he's saying is, okay, I don't know anything about how HIV will be cured, but Jeff is doing a good job. God bless, everything is possible and you will win and all that stuff. So this is positive. But there are a lot of people who are echoing that aspect, that industry does not want to create a cure because it's rather easy for them to keep on selling functional cure like ART, so that there's a lifetime of business. And uh, I keep on telling them that this is conspiracy theory, but the fact that it has been more than 4 decades and we still haven't got this is what is creating this kind of a feeling. And also, you had echoed your thoughts about the struggle that you're facing with, getting AGT up there because it's going to cure. And if it cures, then you don't need ongoing medication, right? So this is the other set of is a sample of the other set of comments that I generally get. So if you have any thoughts to share other than what you have already, then that would be welcome.
Well, I hope when they look at AGT, they'll understand that we're on the same side of this issue as they are. We're really discouraged by the level of attention and interest amongst the major players for a functional cure. We don't really see a tremendous amount of investment in functional cure amongst the players that have, a big strategic interest in treatment. And, unfortunately, corporations that are public, especially, they only have one mandate, and that is maximize shareholder equity. And they may see that the only way to maximize shareholder equity is to act more like Philip Morris, than, Mother Teresa, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know that it's necessarily, there's no, I don't attribute evilness to the individuals within a company, but I think that when you combine capitalism and sort of the rules of corporations together with a massive organization, they end up being sort of establishing SOPs that lean towards revenues instead of towards maybe the maximum efficiency of solving the problem and providing relief to those who need it. Um, so I hope they won't group us in, when they're thinking about, this reality that for 40 years we don't see a functional cure still, or we don't see a cure, and many other things have been cured in the meantime, right? But at the same time, it's not, that there's been no progress, right? You really can look at the, things like Cabenuva and lenacapavir and other cutting edge treatments as being progress that benefits this population. It's just you know we want more because we can't be successful without it. So the good news is that we don't have any incentive except for to create this functional cure. That's the only way that we're going to make money for our shareholders, and so our interests are completely aligned with the HIV population. And I can assure you that I personally and nobody else has made any money on this so far. All been spending. There's been $70 million worth of,
Wow.
investors' money and, another, 10 million that we spent of revenues that we got during the, COVID crisis doing COVID testing. And, there's, debt out there on the balance sheet and whatever. So people have, poured a lot into this, especially me and my family. This has really impacted our lives and our retirements. So, we're dedicated. We're transparent about the data. We really go out there and we just share everything. And after IAS, we'll go ahead and put out a white paper, or share that presentation that we gave at the International AIDS Society in Rwanda, so that people can just see what is really happening in the data. The data speaks for itself.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. And if there's anything else you'd like to let our audience know, then we'll go for it, or we can then wind up the discussion.
No, I mean, it's great seeing you again, Raj. I always appreciate the opportunity to
Likewise.
meet up with you. I actually appreciate you bringing up some of the feedback from your audience. I think it's important, that people stay engaged. I think it is realistic sometimes to feel like this is just taking too long. I feel it too, but I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So, I understand everybody's feelings across the spectrum. And like that one person said, we have to have faith that this is not just possible, but that it will be done, and we just need to keep driving towards that outcome as quickly as possible.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. And yeah, it was nice speaking to you again. And let's meet again, and wish you all the very best, Jeff, until we meet again.
Thanks. Same to you, Raj.
Bye.
Bye.